Call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hopefully everyone's had an opportunity to look at the minutes. If so, can I get a motion to approve the minutes as distributed?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I'll
Any-
abstain.
Okay, one abstention. One abstention. I didn't catch it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carried. So the next thing on the agenda is a public hearing to consider a block party on Glen Abbey Terrace. May I have a motion to open up the public hearing?
I'll move that.
I'll second it.
Is there anyone wishing to speak regarding the closing of Glen Abbey Terrace for a block party? Okay, so now, just so our highway superintendent is aware, you probably were, but with the block parties, we have to, regulation of town superintendent of highways, they issue a permit for the holding of such street prior to commencing. In the event a permit issuing official would be required to block off that portion of the street for vehicular traffic except emergency hazard vehicles and the post detour signs. So I don't know that was done in the past, but we'll make sure that that's done moving forward. There's nobody wishing to speak. May I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll move it. I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Citizens' comments. Anybody wishing to speak regarding the, any town issue? Yes, sir.
Gentlemen, thanks for hearing me.
Yeah, you don't need to speak into that anymore.
Okay.
I don't even know where.
My name is Chuck McFadden. I live at 3682 Hayes Road.
Mhm.
My purpose of coming today, I was hoping I could speak at the...
Sir, if you could just move toward the microphone. We have a recording system
Okay.
now. Sorry.
The mic
Thank
is
you.
on.
Sorry.
The mic is on.
Oh, it is on?
Yes.
Okay.
So I live at 3682 Hayes Road. My purpose was coming today is hoping to speak at the study session so we could have some conversation about the parking on Hayes Road. I know you've tabled it, and I'm very happy that we did. My request was gonna be that we could maybe not vote on it, I didn't wanna make a motion on it, or have you guys make a motion on it, because I think there's other issues than just with that half a mile, which you were gonna vote on. I'm a fire commissioner, and I'm a fireman. If you've ever had the opportunity to drive a fire engine down Hayes Road with 1,000 gallons of water behind you, you realize that the entire length of Hayes Road is basically unable for anybody to park on. Years ago, both sides of that road was designated no parking. Many of the signs have faded, which was brought to our attention, and many of them have disappeared. When they put in the new gas lines of years back, most of them didn't get put back. And the same thing on the other side of the road, when we put in the hydrants, many of them didn't get put back. So there's a handful, about a dozen of signs left on Hayes Road on either side that are faded, need to be replaced. And there's other issues that I think if we're going to have a walkthrough and have the ability to install more, I think there's other issues that we need. The end from the boat launch to 37 is probably the only area where anybody can park on the opposite side of the fog line. But that brings up many other issues on the east side, on the even side of the block, where the boat launch is a lot of residents there. Taking my hat off as a fire chief, I happen to live right there. Coming home from dinner one night and 10 cars were parked on my lawn. Later on that night, I was kind of watching them come out, and I asked the guy, 3 guys came from the bar, and decided to have a tailgate party on my front lawn. I went over to ask them not to do that. I said, "Would you please leave? I got grandkids here." A lot of F-bombs and stuff going on. They threw their bottles at me and peeled out on my lawn and took off. And so on that side of the block, I'm thinking we need to have parking, no parking on both sides of that area, and there needs to be more discussion than just that one side. I don't want to make this an issue at all. But personally, I'm doing this as a public safety thing. Don't want to make an issue with it being a tiki bar, but there's more issues than just saying let's replace a few here and there. I think that whole block it needs to be put back the way it was when that whole block was designated no parking. I mean, we've got people crossing the street at 55 miles an hour. It's another issue. So if we, for God's sakes, if we can just get together and not make this a political thing and realize that someday someone's gonna get killed on that road if we don't make it no parking. There's people crossing the street within a 40-yard area here, dodging in and out of cars to get from one side to the other. Most of them are under the influence. And I don't want to I've been to enough car accidents where I'm cutting people out of cars, and I don't want to go to the one across the street from my house. So again, I appreciate your time to listen to me, and for God's sakes, let's give us some more thought than just something like driving through and say, let's put a couple here, let's put a couple there. The whole area, most of it is unpassable. I mean, unparkable. The only area you could possibly park on the other side of the fog line is from the boat launch to basically the Elms Lodge. And one side of that road is a drainage, so it's basically the even side of the road. So, again, I appreciate your time.
I just have a question, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
That's a county road, right? And you said that there was no parking signs on both sides at one time.
Correct, yeah.
Have you contacted the county at all? And if so, what was their response?
I've been in contact with Brian Donnelly, who's deputy county executive. He directed me to some vehicle and traffic laws, safety laws. I believe it was 1660. I didn't come prepared to talk about that yet, but I believe something may later today. But yes,
About replacing those signs?
basically, in that law that I've been directed to, you all have the ability, I mean, the jurisdiction to put them up ourselves. We even have, if I read that law right, the ability of the codes or zoning guy in the Onondaga County supervisor roads to get together and even discuss speed limits. I'd be gladly forward you the law that I found that Mr. Donnelly directed me to. And we can, please read it. Let's make some good decisions on how it.
No, but why wouldn't they just replace those signs that were there at one
Well,
time?
because
Right?
my understanding is they own the road, but the jurisdiction is turned over to the town. And so you guys, this town, can replace them. I mean, I will forward you all what I read. I mean, I could be reading it wrong, but I don't believe I am.
I think I discussed that earlier.
I
told you.
and believe me, I'm 100% happy with you, but I think that we need to get together as citizens and as a board and everybody and decide, where the no parking should be, because there's gonna be problems at some point. We can piecemeal the road, no parking, or we could bring it back to where it originally was before the gas lines and the sewer and the new water lines were put in. And I appreciate you mentioning that we table this and do a better job, do it some more thinking, but I just think that we need to do it properly, and let's make it safe for the citizens. I know most people think we're the Hazel Hicks, we're down here and we're that, but our lives are just as important as the Radisson people, and I'm very concerned about that. We sometimes get overlooked. I mean, if you drive down and you saw the signs, how do those signs ever get to the point where you can't even read them? Somebody somewhere, whether it be the village, the town roads guys, or whomever that drives by, has to see that sign is unreadable. And whether it's their responsibility, they should be able to pick up a phone and call the county if that's their responsibility.
Well, that's why
we're
we,
not a citizen doing that.
yeah, that's why we tabled it, and we're gonna have
I appreciate that.
and we'll have another public hearing, and we're gonna be down there and walking with the commissioner of DOT for the county, and, we'll do as comprehensive a job as we can within the limits of our authority.
I understand, and I would just, as a commissioner of the fire department, I don't know, so to be involved with it all, to share some insight with you guys as you walk, I would love to do that with you as well.
We can give you a copy.
I appreciate that.
Just so you understand, we don't have anything in our town code law where we saw that no parking signs were ever approved by the town board.
So-
The original place.
So, in the New York State vehicle and safety laws, it's under their section 1660. It's in there where the county, when it turns it under New York State, when any county turns a road over, the jurisdiction of a road over to a town, now you have the jurisdiction. You have the jurisdiction to put in lighting, any crosswalk signs or anything you want, according to this law. I mean, again, I could be reading it wrong, but I was directed to this, and I don't, I just think that I'll gladly send it to you all, and maybe smarter people than me can read it and decide if I'm right or wrong, or if we as a village can, or a town rather, can make this right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Anyone else? Yep.
I'm Liz Schmidt, and I live at 3695 Hayes Road. And thank you again for hearing yet another public comment from me this evening. I'm going to follow up with Chuck McFadden's comment and just refer back to the last board meeting on 7/14. There was this discussion, and Supervisor Wicks did explain jurisdictional issues that come in fact with the road, in particular with Hayes Road as well. And there was an agreement to request a traffic study, and the town clerk graciously kind of explained to us what the traffic study would entail and the time that it would take. After that meeting, upon review of New York State laws, which Chuck has already referred to, and in consultation with Onondaga County and people there, I do believe that the town has a lot more jurisdiction than we've been led to believe on the 14th, and that the town might be able to shorten the time for public safety to be fully addressed on Hayes Road. And so this is New York State law, Title 8, Articles 37 and 41, Sections 1622 and 1660. 1622 refers to speed limits on county roads and town highways. And it says the Department of Transportation, upon request of the county superintendent of highways and the town board, that they actually may establish maximum speed limits at which vehicles may proceed higher or lower than the 55 miles per hour. Hayes Road is a U. It's not a thoroughfare to somewhere. It's not a shortcut to somewhere. You go on Hayes Road because you have business there. Either you're frequenting establishments or you live there, or you're visiting someone who lives there. There's just no reason that it needs to be 55 miles per hour over that U. There's just no reason, and the road isn't particularly built for it, as we've kind of discussed in terms of the width and the lack of shoulder as well. So the board and county can request a lower speed limit. A traffic study is not required in order to do that. Also under section 1660, traffic regulations in towns. Again, the town board can regulate traffic by means of traffic control signals. They can also have the authority, if a parking signs are passed and it becomes down to enforcement, they also have the authority where parking is prohibited to remove the vehicles and require the owners to pay a reasonable charge for their return. So it would be up to the town, or it would be within the purview of the town to enforce this parking ban if it were to happen. And finally, regulate the crossing of the roadways by pedestrians. In summary, the board has the authority to initiate a lower speed limit without a study, to enforce the no parking regulations if passed, and to install a pedestrian crosswalk, even with a crossing signal, which may be called for on a road where a business and its parking are on opposite sides of the road. And specifically, there's a specific business in mind. On the Windsor Cold Spring Harbor Marina, there are hundreds of customers that come on the biggest band nights between April and October. And most of the parking for that establishment is across the street. It is across the street at a third-party owned lot. Often the crossing is going to be occurring after dark, okay? And it's a dark road. And so this is a significant public safety issue. And the board does have the authority to implement the measures to enhance public safety under these laws as well. Thank you for my time.
I was wondering if I could just clarify something, and Tony, maybe you can, and Liz, if I can just, when we say, correct me if I'm wrong, when we say a traffic study, we're basically requesting the lower speed limit, but we can't implement the lowest speed limit. This is how I understand things until the state says, okay. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
I think you're right. When they say you don't need a study, the state's not going to change the law without a study. So
Okay.
even though the law says we don't need one, we're not gonna get a change by the state.
And we
You're
are,
arguing the Department of Transportation would not respond to a request by the county superintendent and the town board to immediately lower speed limit?
they don't normally, I mean, our experience is they never immediately lower the speed limit. We are always in support of anybody that comes forth and says, we'd like to have a lower speed limit on XYZ road. I mean, we pass that like that. We never say no. But then we're not at the mercy, but we have to wait for the state. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but that's how we've always done it. And, we would like to, I'm guessing, we would love to see a lower speed limit on Hayes Road. And we'll ask for that request, but we can't just.
I am concerned about the timing of the traffic study, because one of the biggest sources of traffic on this road is from April to October, not really the start of school. I mean, school bus traffic is pretty limited, and not as concerning given the safety precautions with the school bus.
Sure.
So I think the biggest traffic concern comes from those summer months, particularly after dark.
Anyone else wishing to speak tonight? Okay.
It's really a question. My name is Holly Magic. I live at 3692 Hayes Road, and I'm reading the agenda, and I noticed that there's a motion to hold a public hearing Thursday, August 18th, to adopt updated zoning map for town of Lysander. I was wondering where I could get more information to be better prepared for this public hearing.
You wanna tell her what the,
So the draft map will be posted on the website. All this is doing is, there's been 3 parcels that there's been zone changes on since the last map was adopted. So it'll reflect those zone changes. And then there's 1 parcel that's currently owned by ESDC that was part of the Radisson PUD. And when the 2016 map was adopted, was incorrectly shown. So we're correcting that error and we're updating it to reflect the zone changes that have occurred since the last map was adopted.
This is under where on the
the
website?
public
We'll
hearing.
have it up, and now that they're setting the public hearing, we'll post it tomorrow.
On the website?
Yes, on the town website.
Okay,
But
thank
just so
you.
that you know, the public hearing that we're having is not gonna be to approve a zone change. It's going to be to send the new map to the state. That's basically all it is.
Right, but I think if we have issues with it, I'm not saying that I do, you have, 60 days to appeal those things? Is that an appeal?
I don't know what, we're not, like I said, we're not approving anything, we're just sending it to the state.
Yes, I say it's a local law, actually, so we adopt it as a local law that would be subject to permissive referendum if you wanted to challenge it. But we're not, you can only challenge the changes that we're making would be what would be challengeable. So if you're specifically saying that you would like to challenge the zoning of the tiki bar, that wouldn't be part of this local law.
No, I was just wondering what this was pertaining to, so I
Oh,
could be better prepared for the meeting.
Okay.
I think the other part of it is that these zone changes were already approved through public hearings years ago. They're just not on the map right now. We just need to reflect those changes on our map. The processes were done, followed, it's just, we haven't updated the zoning map when you look at it over there on that board. So it's not, there's no new zone changes, these have been approved over the previous years that just, we haven't updated that.
And all that information will be on the website?
Yeah, it's actually right on the map up in the top corner. It reflects that's the map that's currently approved, but the draft map reflects the parcels that are changing.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
My name's Ed Schmidt, I live at 3695 Hayes Road. Just to follow up to Holly's question, are any of these zone changes along Hayes Road?
No,
Okay. All right, thank you.
Anyone else? No? Okay. Town board comments. Start with you, Mr. Rill.
None from me. I know we've got a busy night, so stick with the agenda.
Likewise, none for me as well.
Mr. Esser.
Well, I have a couple, but they'll be really quick. So, as you may know, I'm on the Canton Woods Senior Center Board, which is just a wonderful organization serving residents, not just of the town of Lysander, but the village of Baldwinsville and the village and the town of Van Buren too. They're always looking for money because it's a not-for-profit agency, even though the both towns and the village participate in the funding of the facility. So there's a golf tournament, September 12th, at the Hickory Hills Golf Course. It's a fundraiser. It's $50 a person. You get food, you get 18 holes of golf, the whole bit. If you'd like to support Canton Woods in that way, give Canton Woods a call at 315-638-4536 and get yourself signed up. The other one is Close at Heart. One of the things that the Canton Woods does is oversee a bunch of other service groups, and one of them is the Vivo Express. And these folks are the folks that volunteer their cars in driving people to and from hospital and doctor appointments. They're really short of drivers right now, and people who really need to go to the doctor and don't have their own transportation rely on these folks. And so if you're willing to help, and you don't have to commit yourself every single day, but here and there, once in a while, give Canton Woods a call, and they would love to see you participate. And the third thing, I just have to do a hats off to Kevin Merrill at the Parks Department. I had asked him a couple of months ago to consider doing something with chess for kids, teaching kids how to play chess. And he did, and I took my 2 grandkids there the other day, and there had to be a dozen little kids learning to play chess, and I just thought that was the neatest thing in the world.
That's just the beginner.
And that's just the beginners, right?
Yeah, there's like 30 kids, right?
Yeah, so good job, Kevin. And actually, let me do an advertisement. So it's every Wednesday.
It's every Wednesday
at 3 o'clock at the pavilion there. Thank you very much.
And pickleball for kids is still going on too every Saturday.
Every Saturday morning. You still haven't brought your son yet.
It's too early. It's 9 o'clock in the morning.
It goes till 2.
My kids leave until 1. We slept until 3 today. He's a night owl.
That's all I have.
All right, I'd like to thank everyone for showing up tonight. Everyone who came up and gave their comments, thank you very much. Thank you for watching on PAC. We have our new system here. I don't know exactly how it all works, but I'm guessing somewhere, sometime, people are going to be seeing this. So thanks for watching on PAC, and hope everyone's enjoying their summer. That's it.
Okay. If you didn't notice, Mr. Yeager put in his resignation, and it wasn't because he's mad at us. He's looking to, I don't think it was, he's looking to move on and advance his career, but I want to publicly thank him for the time I've been here. I thought he did an exceptional job, and I'm sure that he's going to do great in his future career. So just wanted to publicly thank you. There was one other thing that I had. I didn't write it down, so I can't remember what it is. But anyway, so that's good enough for me. Department head reports. Mr. Lysander. You, Mr. Merrill.
We are that much closer with the permit from county to put some form of safety devices along or between Hinkle Boulevard.
Let them know what you came up with.
We're gonna place 24-inch, more or less diameter boulders, if you will. They're just large rocks, but they'll serve as at least some form of a barrier. I mean, it'll be on the other side of the ditch, so it's.
And you had ones out like that, similar to that in Jamesville, and they did the job, right?
At Jamesville, they did a fine job, and there's something that we can still manage to handle. Anything bigger than that, we have to get much bigger equipment and move into place. So these are something that are manageable.
And when I looked at the drawing, the boulders are gonna be in between the fence and the ditch.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The length of the field.
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
The county, and that's because the county wouldn't put up guardrail, nor would, and we even talked about widening, deepening the ditch. They wouldn't do the ditch either, so our solution of boulders is pretty much the best option
Okay.
So we're just waiting for that. We have to send that permit in, and then they'll sign it. And then, so we get that. Place their order.
And the parking lot should be finished, the additional parking there should be finished.
Yeah, we're just waiting for, Al was waiting for some materials to come in, and then we're just waiting on Tiroli to come back. They got called out with a lot of different jobs with Aqua, so we're just waiting for them to come back and finish off what would be the northern ditch along Smoky Hollow, kind of the corner of Smoky Hollow and the park driveway. We're gonna put pipe and catch basin in there to lessen the depth of the ditch. It's a pretty dangerous ditch for staff to go around and string trim. Then you can't mow it, you'd have to string trim it. But,
I haven't seen anyone park in that new section, if people even know that it's there.
on occasion they will. I've noticed that the current users, they don't want to park there because then they have to cross the driveway. They have to walk a little bit.
Once it gets cleaned up, it might be a
Once
little easier.
it's opened up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it is open, but once it's done, I think there'll be a better message there that it's done and open.
Okay. Anything else?
Exactly.
Mr. Sweeting?
Nothing for me tonight.
Okay, here we go. Mrs. Golden.
You have a copy of the report. We sent out a total of 8,593 preliminary change of assessment notices in March. Informal meetings were held during March and April, and 307 of them were scheduled, and I actually ran out of them. May 2nd, the tentative roll was filed, and an additional 210 change of assessment notices were mailed. Grievance day was Tuesday, June 7th, and Tuesday, June 14th, and a total of 241 property owners filed a grievance complaint. The final assessment roll was filed with the county and the state on June 30th, and the New York State Office of Real Property Tax Services have reviewed and verified that the 2022 equalization rate or level of assessment is at 100% for the town of Lysander, and attached you will see that we are one of the very few in Onondaga County that can say that. The Cornell seminar and appraising July 17th to the 21st was very informative. I attended two-day classes. The first one was valuation of utilities and the changing face of retail. I earned 24 continuing education credits, which gets me back in the good graces of the state since all of our classes were canceled for the last couple of years because of the pandemic. And I've already submitted the paperwork to the state for reimbursement because you only have 30 days from the time you get back from class to get the paperwork to them. Otherwise, they don't consider that to be reimbursable. And the town of Lysander received 6 small claim filings from homeowners to date, and no new Supreme Court or commercial property filings this year.
Good.
Questions?
I have one, but it concerns what we're voting on later with the,
Yeah, we could, you want to talk
You
about
want-
that at that time? It's up. to the
Yeah, why don't we
boards.
talk about that?
Yeah, okay,
then, I have one more.
sure.
I was reading the Messenger today, and I don't know if you had read it, but there was an article, a letter to the editor. Salina tax policy targets low-income seniors. Did you had a chance to look that over at all?
Oh, no, I
Okay.
haven't seen it, no.
Well, I'm trying to get the gist of what the person was complaining about. She felt that town of Salina, low-income seniors pay their fair share of property taxes. They required the IRA capital gains to be included in their annual income application. I mean, is that all state required
Yes,
items? Okay, so that's not the town of Salina
yeah.
or the town
No,
decided.
No, there are specifics for each exemption. There are specifics. They're referring to the senior citizen limited income exemption. And actually in the town of Salina, they benefit from the deduction for unreimbursed medical expenses. where the town of Lysander, that's a local option that has never been passed. So the way it works in Salina, any medical expenses that you have that aren't, prescriptions or whatever that aren't covered by your insurance, they deduct that from your income. And it's really a bookkeeping nightmare because it's hard for assessors to ascertain what was reimbursed by the insurance company and what wasn't. And what may be a duplicate receipt, those kind of things. And so basically you just get a calculator and you add it all up and you take that out. So the senior citizens in Salina are one of the very few towns in Onondaga County that actually have that benefit because Salina has passed that local option. But the rest of it is all, pretty much administered by the state. There are guidelines.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Mcconaghy.
Hello. We are gearing up for budget time at this point. So we're going to try to digitize some things and present some additional information to you guys, which I think will be very helpful when you're making your budget decisions. I'm almost complete with our West Phoenix sewer variance project that we were doing, so that is almost done. I think that we're gonna try to set up a meeting with them next week and bring that to a close, so that will be complete. Just finished a 10-year payroll analysis, the request, Mr. Jurassic. So you guys all have that as well, and I'm sure that you'll have a question on that, so just let me know. And I will do my best to answer them for you. And we're just working on modernizing some systems and digitizing other forms that we use, as well as business as usual.
Okay. Our town clerk, what do you have for us?
So Monday, we started selling hunting licenses, and it's been pretty busy in the town clerk's office. So those, the doe permits will be on sale until the close of day on October 1st. Then there's a month off, and then they resume back in November. So if anybody has any questions about hunting licenses, come see me. We're happy to help, and we have better customer service than Walmart or Bunnings, so.
Should be a lot more this year because people can't afford meat.
Right.
Cheaper to shoot it than to buy it.
If you can find it.
I don't know if you looked at the prices.
If you can find it,
It's cheaper to shoot it than it is to buy meat now. Or,
And another thing is to, that a woman from the audience, forgot your name, I'm sorry, but you were talking about the maps, the map that we're gonna be doing. If you go on the website and you see the map on there and you can't really see it very well, I can print out a nice copy for you if you wanna come in and grab it. I'll also put some on the bulletin boards as well, so sometimes it's nicer to have a piece of paper in front of you to actually look at the maps than to see it online. So that's always an option for any map that you would ever want, so just let me know on that, okay? Also, I will miss Al as well, because I learned a lot from him, and I didn't know what a culvert was until I started working here. There's Al. And he's taught me a lot, so I'm gonna miss him. He's a wealth of knowledge, so. Thanks, Al. And I'll miss talking about golf with our kids. Okay, thanks.
another reason to have cake,
Great.
right? Okay. We'll move on to the regular agenda items. As we discussed earlier, motion A, we're going to table. Motion B, may I have a motion to approve a block party at Glen Abbey Terrace on August 27th, 2022 at 4 p.m.
I'll move that.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carried. May I have a motion to hold a public hearing on Thursday, August 18th, 2022 at 7 p.m. to adopt a local law to update the zoning map for the town of Lysander.
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Did you move it, Pete?
I did.
didn't.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Pete's fine.
So who seconded it?
Jeff.
Jeff, okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion Motion carried. May I have a motion to advertise for bids for the 2022 Town of Lysander swale clearing and pond mowing contract? Bids will be due in the town clerk's office by Wednesday, August 17, 2022 at 10 a.m.
I'll move it.
I'll second.
Any discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carried. May I have a motion to authorize the town supervisor to sign the agreement dated July 14, 2022 with Bondadeo and Company LLP?
I'll move that.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Have we, I know this is about policies, but has anyone contacted the Association of Towns about if they have any policies in place or any other municipalities around us to see what they do?
Regarding?
Policies. This is about
Yeah.
policies, right?
Yeah, we have. Yeah, we got town of Islip, and every town is different, depending on what it is, but yeah, we have.
Because this is about spending that $8,100 to write policies, correct?
It's the policies that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Mcconaghy, policies, when we're talking about spending money, they're all specific to the different towns. I mean, you can take a canned policy, but we want to develop them for our specific town and how we do things.
Right.
So that's what, and it's more about the flow of information too. It's how it goes to the planning board and who should sign off on it to ensure that we're following GASB rules and also it's a clear line, clearly delineated where the information goes, who signs off on it, because in the past the town hasn't been that clear with it. But there's, every town's a little different when it comes to that.
We also want to make sure we have the adequate internal controls in place to mitigate error and fraud as well, which is important.
I know we've talked about this previous months, it's come up, and I just feel that, I seem to think we could do this on our own without spending additional money. We've got department heads that have pretty much been in place for years, that we should be able to write up the policies and the procedures of how we take payments, receive payments, send payments out. I just feel like we should be able to do this in-house without spending additional money.
Well, part of the problem, we have a problem with West Phoenix right now because that wasn't done correctly. We got a problem with the lighting district because it wasn't done properly. And part of this process is when you have a comptroller that's been here for 30 years, and I'm not saying, I'm not putting any, talking about our comptroller. I think you did a great job, but it's just good accounting practices to have people come in and oversee what your practices are, what your policies and procedures are, so that you don't have these problems moving forward. Not only that, they get to look at our books, and if they see anything that's out of whack, then they bring it to our attention and we can fix it. That's just a good accounting across the board, as opposed, that's part of this process that's why we didn't get a full-blown audit. You either get a full-blown audit, but they actually talked me out of doing the full-blown audit and going with this process because they look at all our policies and procedures, and if there's anything that's out of whack, they identify them as they go. And we found a number of things that were not done correctly, and that's because you have the same people looking at it all the time. And sometimes it's just like when you write a letter. Sometimes you can't see your own grammatical errors in a letter because you're the one writing it. And that's the same thing with internal controls. If you don't have an outside entity looking at these internal controls, you don't know if you're doing it correctly or not. It's always, it's just good accounting practice to have an outside entity to come in periodically, and we haven't done it for a while, and to look at your internal controls and not do it yourself. Any accounting book that you can look at will tell you that. That's accounting 101.
So when we found errors, who found the errors, you or the Bondale group?
It was a combination. I think that it also bears mentioning as well is that this is just an extension of what you guys agreed to in December of 21. And what happened on that same date was the current comptroller that you had in place resigned. So the contract was approved for Bonadeo to do this work, and instead a lot of those monies were taken up by them performing as the comptroller for the months until I got here. So I think that's part of this as well. So instead of that allocation going to policies and procedures, a lot of the money went to them performing as the comptroller for the end of December, January, February. But it's a combination. I found things when Tanya was here, she was performing as the comptroller for 2 months. She found some things and areas of weakness. So it's been a combination.
Well, we were just talking about West Phoenix. You found those errors in West Phoenix, the accounting errors. You found we got a bill from the village, and you found the errors in the billing with the village. So, so she's doing it as well, but even she's brand new in order to protect our control. And as I said, it's good. It's just good accounting practice to have an outside entity come in and look how you're conducting business to ensure that we're doing it the right way. Not that there's any fraud, but there always could be. But even if there isn't, it just solidifies and identifies areas that are either running smoothly or areas that need improvement.
Great, but this isn't auditing. This is writing policies and procedures for us that I feel that we just need to write them down and over as department heads and the town board, other people just need to look them over and follow that process. I mean, later on tonight, we're looking to move $67,000 out of the unassigned fund balance to pay Bonadeo Group, to pay for a new comptroller, and this would be part of that. I just feel that this could be done in-house. That's where I'm at.
Well, specifically, the money for that letter is coming out of contingency. So the engagement letter that you guys have in front of you, there's also a budget modification attached to that as well. Those monies coming from contingency. The amounts that are coming from unassigned fund balance are amounts that you guys have already approved and agreed to with prior resolutions, of which there was not a budget modification attached at the time. There should have been.
Correct. I mean, yeah, I asked at the beginning when I wasn't part of that conversation in December of where are we getting the money from. I asked again in January, and here we are finally in August taking care of it. I mean, this is nothing against you. I just feel that we have good people here that could probably write these procedures. I just think there might not be people following them, and even if we write them, will they follow them?
Well, if we write them, they'll follow. But the problem, the question is here, how many people here have an accounting degree?
I don't think you need an accounting degree to know that when the planning board approves a development, there's so much money to come from the developer. And you write it down and you tell the comptroller what's coming in and what it's going to be for. And the developer has a specific PO number or whatever you decide. And I don't think you need an accounting degree to come up with this procedure. And if we do, I really question where we're at as a town, because a lot of towns don't have this written down. Maybe they're in just as much of a mess as we were. But to pay a company $10,000 to do this for us, I think we should be able to do it ourselves. But I'm one of 5.
Well, I disagree with you. I think you need professionals to do some of these things. We are sitting down and doing policies and procedures, and I have a lot of experience writing policies and procedures. We're going right through our whole manual, the employee handbook, which is, when I first looked at it, I saw the employee handbook and the policies and procedures were all commingled, which is not a way to do it. It's just too confusing. Plus, a lot of the policies and procedures that were in there were very generic. They're not specific enough to ensure that things are running the way that we should be running. Now, in saying that, there's a lot of things in there that Yeah, we can do, but when it comes to accounting, when it comes to auditing, you need people from the outside to take a look at what you're doing. Otherwise, if what you said was the case, if we had people here that can do these things, why are we having issues with the West Phoenix sewer district? Why are we having with the lighting district? Why are we having that? Why did we have $50,000 that wasn't collected from in lieu of parks? I mean, there's a number of things that were going on, and I don't think that, I'm sure that none of that was done intentionally, but obviously there needs to be outside professionals to take a look at our accounting and our money practices in the organization, not bloodborne pathogens, that's not what they're doing, not, vehicle use policy, we can write them, and we are. But with these specific things, you need professionals to do that, and I disagree with you.
Well, the thing that you mentioned about the handbook policy, that was outsourced, correct? Didn't the policy, the handbook policy,
Don't look at me.
that was outsourced already. Didn't the town already have a company write those policies? So now we hired a company.
You mean a human resources, the handbook policy, you're
The
talking about human
handbook,
resources?
yeah. The town already had a professional company write those policies, and now we're gonna rewrite them? So why don't we try to write these policies ourselves first?
We did.
And then if they don't work,
And they were, as my recollection was, we wrote them and then we had an outside company take a look at them and making sure that we had the i's dotted and t's crossed.
yeah, and now we're gonna redo them again.
Well,
Yeah.
human resources is different. It's different than.
No, I know, I'm just
than
saying,
what
it's
we're
just
talking about.
policies, yeah.
We're talking about the fiscal environment of our town. So I'm with Supervisor Wicks. If you want your fiscal house in order, you want someone who works with money to put that house in order.
Yeah, that's why we have a comptroller here.
We have a comptroller to keep track of the comings, the revenue.
And to do the auditing as well.
Not necessarily.
That's the responsibility of a town comptroller.
Yeah, once it's in place.
Again, Jeff, I didn't finish. What I'm saying is if we're going to write policy to document the method that we need to document the coming and going of money, we want somebody or some entity other than, the elementary teacher, the phone salesman, the retiree. We want someone who works with money to put those policies together so that they're using the same practices that accountants across the state would use for municipal accounting. That's what I think. And you know what? It's not free. I get it. It's not free, but it might be worth it to make sure it's done right.
Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, motion carried. May a motion approve the budget modification forms as provided by the town comptroller? Want to explain them? Oh, hold on. Getting ahead of myself. May I have a motion to approve them provided by the town comptroller? I moved it.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion?
I just have one thing. In the future, if we could break up each budget modification to the account it's coming out of and what it's paying for, because there's a couple, I know you just put it on one page to try to keep it easier, but I'd like them separate, so it's
On
easier
separate pages?
for the public to see the account we're debiting, the accounts we're crediting, and the reason why. That's all.
Sure, absolutely, and they are all in order, so every section kind of
Right.
starts with
But if
where it's
it's-
coming from and then where it has to go, but yes.
But if it's like the bottom deal group one, then if the public gets it, there's not like
No
checkers
problem.
across multiple accounts. Thank you.
So if she did, so we have about 15 here. You want 15 separate sheets of paper?
No, because
No,
these
this
transfers are
would be
for about
right?
three things.
This
It'd
would
be
be
three
three
pages.
instead of one, basically, so.
But to the public, a lot of people won't understand it because they don't look at debits and credits and, negative numbers.
Are you speaking of each section? So, for instance, just as an example,
Yeah, like the judges stuff would be separate.
Yep.
The, unassigned fund balance to go in for paying for bookkeeping and auditing expenses and all that, yes.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carried. May I have a motion to authorize the town of Lysander to decline participation in the New York State NRR program, non-reappraisal reassessment, maintaining 100% assessment.
I will move that.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion? I'll start off with this. When Ms. Golden and I were talking about the assessments coming up for this next year, because our assessments are, and correct me if I'm wrong at any point, our assessments are based on the previous year's sales. So we were looking at between a 14 and 15% increase for next year based on the sales from last year, correct?
Yes.
So then we also took a look at, because the different towns that don't have 100%, and the reason we have and I checked with our legislator, Brian May, who was on the town board at the time. The reason we have 100% assessment, because it's the most fair way to do things. If everybody's house are being assessed for what it's valued, they're paying their fair share of taxes to go towards keeping the town and the school and everything else. But what's happening is she actually brought in an example of a neighboring town that isn't at 100%, but she compared a $200,000 house in that town and a $200,000 house in the town of Lysander. Very comparable. If you looked at them, they looked almost exactly alike. Both appraised at the same price, but when you looked at the school tax, the town of Lysander was paying $1,000 more in school tax. Well, why is that? Well, the state is supposed to come in, if the town is not at 100% appraisal, they're supposed to come in and equalize that. So theoretically, they're supposed to bring that up so that a town or a house in a neighboring town valued at $200,000 going to the Ballsville School District would pay the same as a house in the town of Lysander that are paying school taxes in Ballsville. That's not happening. So if you look at, and I don't have a good example here, but houses are in a bell curve. We're probably at the peak of where houses are selling at now. And I think we talked about it. 2019 is when this housing market went out of whack. So people are paying, and I'll use an example that I know of in Radisson. When you go to sell your house, you'll bring in a realtor, and they know what the houses are valued at. So this one house in Radisson was valued by the realtor, and they were valuing it high at $449,000 because the market was hot. So that's what they said this house was worth. Well, that house sold for $539,000, $90,000 more than what the professionals in that market believe that house was worth. Well, why is that happening? There's a number of reasons why it's happening, but it is. So the people in the town that are selling their houses are making a windfall, but the majority of the people, especially the people that are on a fixed income that are going to stay in their house, are getting murdered by this, financially devastated by the inflated cost of these houses. So when we look at it, and I talked to the other board members, we want to be at 100%, but right now it's peaked out. If we left it the way it is, we'd be looking at another 15% increase, even though the housing market's coming down. So I suggested that we ride it out for a couple of years, because even if next year we're not at 100%, so the state comes in and does their equalization. Well, people will probably make out better than they would if we were at 100% anyway, so it's not hurting anybody to do that. But by the following year, the second or third year, we should be back to an equilibrium where houses are selling for what they should be selling for. Now, if a house in 2019, if a house was valued at 200,000, they're probably not going to be 200,000 3 years from now. They're probably going to be at 230, but they certainly aren't going to be selling for 275 or 300,000 like they are now. And who really gets hurt by that the most? People that are younger still. Two people are working or they have good jobs. Do they like the inflated taxes that they're paying? No, they don't like it, but they can absorb it. But I know of at least one individual that's living on a fixed income of a small pension, carpenter's pension, and a small Social Security check, and his wife just recently passed away, so he lost that income. Those are the people on the lower end economic spectrum that are really getting devastated by this inflated housing market. So my suggestion to the board, and hopefully we pass it tonight, was that we ride it out for a couple of years, let that the housing market come back to where it should be and stabilize again before we look at going back to 100% assessment.
Teresa, I have a question for you. What happens if, worst case scenario, prices keep going up and up and up? After the second year, when we pause this, then what? Are we going to do increases 40, 50%?
It would depend on the market.
But if the market went up and kept going
If the
up?
market continued to go up, that is a possibility. But what is happening right now, because Supervisor Wicks spoke to this, our valuation date is set by law, and it says for each assessment roll, it's as the property exists on March 1st. So that's why the exemption deadline is March 1st. If your house is done and finished on March 1st, you get a full tax bill. If it's not, you probably get a partial tax bill for that year, because taxable status date is March 1st every year. But the kicker is it's valued based on the previous July 1st. So we're almost, when we send notices out in April or May, we're a year behind what's actually happening in the market. And there's no way around it. That's what the law requires. So the last 4 years, prices have gone up. This past year, this assessment roll saw increases that assessors that have been in the business for 20 plus years have never seen. The problem is where we are right now and where we're going to be next year, roughly a year ahead, I think are going to be very extreme. Interest rates are going up. They've gone up twice already, but the full impact of that has not shaken out. So I think it would be almost a perfect storm if we decided to keep the assessments at 100%, knowing that a year from now, nobody has a crystal ball. We don't know how bad it will get, or how much those interest rates are going to cool the housing market down, or how fast. But where I'm coming from with this, so that's the main concern for me. That valuation date being a year back, it's always very hard to explain to property owners, and they don't want to hear it, especially when interest rates have gone up. And I started the conversation with the supervisor about this because of the fact that when I considered everything the town board does, typically you have a public hearing and you get that input from the public. If you consider what the assessor's office survived and went through from the middle of March until the third week in June this year as a public hearing on our assessment practices, the resounding answer was they're fed up with it. They don't want it anymore. They don't want to understand why we do it, and they're basically just tired of it. So that's when we started having the discussion about, do we want to continue? Do we want to take a break? Where do we want to go from here?
If I can chime in at this point. I can't think of a more patently unfair way to raise tax dollars than property taxes. It is the most unfair way to do things. So I would be in full support of passing this thing where we're going to get away from full value assessment, because, and let me explain why I just said those volatile words. There were members of Congress this year who actually proposed taxing unrealized gains on your capital investments. Like, how dare you? I have money that I've invested, I haven't done anything with it, and you're going to tax me on unrealized gains? Well, guess what happens in the housing tax market? Every time we raise assessments, or any municipality raises assessments, we're basically saying, you've sat in your house for 20 years, you haven't sold it, your house value has gone up, guess what? You're going to pay more money. But I didn't get that money. That house, it could be worth twice what I paid for it. So the whole property tax equation, in my opinion, is so unfair to people who have been in their houses for any length of time. If you buy a house at $500,000 and you're willing to pay for that money and you've got the money to pay for it, then you should pay taxes on $500,000. But 30 years from now, when all you could have afforded today was $500,000 and you're now retired, how dare you say that, guess what, you should pay taxes on a house that's worth $750,000. But I'm not making, my kids may end up selling that house. I'm not going to sell it. So I support this because I am so thoroughly upset with the way America taxes people in their communities to raise money. I think there's a much better way. It's certainly not through property taxes. We're not going to change that. All we are is a little town of Lysander, and the state of New York is obviously not going to change this. But for the record, I hope what I just said makes sense in terms of a philosophical approach to why it's inappropriate to keep raising assessments on people who are not going to realize the gain in the value of their house.
Well said, well said.
So what does this cost the town of Lysander if we're not at 100%?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Just to give you a little bit of background without keeping us here all night. When the town of Lysander first started the 100% assessment, I believe it was 1999 or 2000. They were at 10%. They did a townwide reevaluation. They brought everyone up to 100%. And from that time going forward, so the past 20 plus years, the town of Lysander has been at 100% assessment. For the first 10 years of that, roughly, the state basically said, if you maintain your assessments, it's the right thing to do. At 100%, we're going to give you $5 a parcel for doing that, for the expenses and the additional costs and all of that. Roughly 10 years ago, that money went away. No one gets it anymore. So at this point, there is no incentive for a town to remain at 100% because that money has gone away, and because if you looked at that assessor's report that had the equalization rate page that said we were at 100%, if you look at the other towns in the county, they range from a little over 1% to 100%. And there's only, I think, 6 or 8 of them now, and 2 of them are Van Buren and Lysander, that are at 100%. Everyone else has thrown in the towel and said, we've had enough of this. So it will not cost the town of Lysander anything not to be at 100%, because the state will use their equalization rate process to equalize across, across boundaries for school taxes and for county taxes. That's the only thing that the equalization rate affects. The people in town of Lysander pay their town taxes. It doesn't have to be equalized because everybody's in the same township. So it doesn't really cost the town anything. Now, if you were to go, the longer you go without maintaining assessments, the more out of whack your assessment roll can become. And you've seen some articles about the city of Syracuse and how their assessments are, need a little work. The longer you go without doing a reevaluation or updating your assessment roll, the more out of whack it can be and unequitable that it can become. And if it gets to the point that it's out of whack, then the state says the only way that you can fix it is to do a townwide revale. And then that would be an expense for the town to bring everyone up to 100%. That's the only cost.
Okay, so how does this, if we vote on this, how does this change how your department runs?
We won't be sending out change of assessment notices based on market-driven values.
Explain to them,
Okay,
let's talk
so-
about,
So basically, we won't be analyzing the assessment roll and determining which neighborhoods are below 100%. The state will equalize the town. Physical increases, all the new construction, if you put in a pool, if you add a garage, all of those things are still gonna happen. We're still gonna administer the exemptions. Everything remains the same, we just won't be chasing that 100% target with the state.
And how long would this be for if we vote on, if we approve this?
Well, actually, it can be, because you're just making a resolution to not participate in that non-reappraisal reassessment program. You can revisit it annually if you decide to. It's entirely up to you.
I mean, I just hope that everybody understands. School districts still got the same nut to crack, the town still has the same nut to crack.
Yes,
It's just, your tax rate might change,
yes.
but your
yes,
assessment might not.
Yes.
Okay.
So since we got you here, how come condos aren't at 100% assessment, right?
Condos are not at 100%
Can we make them
assessment.
100% though?
Condos are not because of a law that was passed, I believe, in the
New York City
70s
law.
that came out of a situation downstate, particularly New York City. And so what the condo law actually says is a condo is not a building. So it can look like a house, it can look like a townhouse, it can look like an apartment building. It's the form of ownership is a condo. And so they had the situation in other parts of Onondaga County a few years ago where they actually built houses, single-family houses. They got a roughly 40% tax break because they were in a condo ownership situation. And the way it works and
They
how
revised that law since then.
well,
right?
actually, they haven't. Actually, it's on the governor's desk right now, and we're hoping, after 20 years of fighting, that she's gonna pass it. But it will not affect condos that already exist.
Right.
It's a local option. As soon as I hear that it's passed, I will let you know. But it will affect condo ownership properties going forward, not for the existing properties. And what it says is, whatever is in that condo ownership, what's condo 1 or condo 2, you value it based on the income that that whole complex can generate, and then you divide that amongst the percentage of the ownership. So if an apartment had 5% of the ownership, you would add all those apartments up, you would value them based on the income approach as a whole, and then an apartment would get 5% of that value. So that's basically how it works. The problem, and it works pretty good with apartments, because apartments are pretty much normally rented. But when you get into townhouses and single-family homes, you can't generate enough income to offset the difference between the sales comparison approach to value, which means the market value driven. So that's where you get that, difference between what the market says it's worth and what the income says it's worth.
Okay.
Okay?
anyone else? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed?
Any abstentions? Motion carried. May I have a motion to accept the resignation of Town Engineer Al Yeager effective Friday, September 9th, 2022?
If we don't make the motion, you can't leave. That's not how it works. I'll make it.
I'll second that, reluctantly.
Okay, any discussion?
Al, I just want to thank you for everything you've done, all your patience with me. I ask a lot of questions sometimes. Thank you. you teach me. I knew what culverts were. But I don't know how much more I knew, so thanks.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. May I have a motion to accept the resignation of Melissa Mcconaghy as assessment aide effective Friday, August 5th, 2022?
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carried. Okay, I'm going to add, there's some, motion J, I'm going to add some language to it after August 5th, 2022. So may I have a motion to appoint Melissa Mcconaghy as assessment clerk effective Friday, August 5th, 2022, with benefits and salary consistent with the administration labor agreement?
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Okay, what this is, we have an employee, Melissa Mcconaghy, that she was appointed to an assessment aide way back, and they never had a test for it. And once they, and you can correct me if I'm wrong in any of this, once they had the test, the information that was tested, there was no study material or anything else like that. So she actually didn't pass the test. But her real job, the job that she's doing is assessment aide, which they don't have a test for. But by appointing her to that assessment aide, that's essential. Or assessment clerk, I'm sorry. Yeah, assessment clerk, thank you. Assessment clerk, that's the job that she actually does day to day. And so what we were doing, she's a very good employee. We want to keep her, so this is, we want to make sure that she gets the most opportunity to keep her job as we can provide with her. Now, she's going to have to pass that test. If she doesn't pass the test, we can't help her out any more past that. But we're confident that she will pass the assessment clerk test. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carried. I have a motion to accept the resignation of Amanda Riley as court clerk effective Friday, August 26, 2022.
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? So it may seem like we got a lot of resignations lately, but Ms. Riley is, she's leaving us because of some family issues that she just can't work out and keep her job here with the town. So we're sorry that she has to leave, but it's something that she has to do in order to meet her family obligations. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carried. Okay, I do think there's a reason to have an executive session tonight because we need to get some legal advice regarding potential litigation, also to discuss the work history of a specific employee. May I have a motion at 8:14 to move into executive session?
I'll move it. I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're in executive session.